Right, James, you mentioned earlier that when you were a youngster, your main ambition was to be a racing driver. Now, I'm told you're still quite heavily involved in motorsports. Can you tell us a bit about that side of your life and where your ambitions lie within that sport?
Yeah, well, like I say, that would have been my dream as a kid. Wasn't good enough, wasn't rich enough either. It's a very, very wealthy sport. Luckily, I've been able to kind of afford to do it at a very, very low level. It's the equivalent of point-to-pointing, I suppose, club level motorsport. My granddad, although he's 82 now, he's still really active, so I'm very lucky. He has built my racing car, runs it. My mum helps out, so I think it's about 8 rounds a year. Races like Silverstone, Brands Hatch, Donington, etc. Lots of places, not many wins. But yeah, I enjoy that. That's kind of my getaway from horse racing, and just that'll be my relaxation away from it. As for ambitions, it's a very expensive hobby, and like I say, I enjoy doing it, but there's no particular ambitions in that kind of sport. But yeah, it's nice to get away from the horses just for the odd weekend.
And what's the grade that you race in? What was it called?
It's kind of the club level. The series I race in is called Low Cost Mazda. So anyone that knows the Lotus 7, I suppose, back in the day, or Caterham sports cars, it's kind of based on that. It's
Like
got a roll cage. Kit car, yeah. It's got an 1800 Mazda engine in, so it goes quite quick, pretty low to the ground. And yeah, it's what I like to do to get away.
Okay, I'm also told you're ultra competitive. I don't know if you agree with that or not. Is that obviously it'd be a help as a jockey and a racing driver, but is it helpful in life in general, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it helps you try and get on to achieve the best you can. It probably does mean that sometimes you, like I probably wasn't a very good person to live with when didn't win in the races. Certainly, I wasn't very happy. I wasn't very happy when we won, but definitely wasn't very happy when I got beat. It does make you probably sulky. But yeah, I think most jockeys or most sportsmen you'd ask would be competitive. Nobody particularly likes losing. But yeah, I suppose I'm pretty competitive.
Now, I've been told to ask you about the photo finish at Stephen Powell's Stag Do. Was that another motor racing
Yeah, so
incident?
Stephen Powell, he's racecourse announcer at Newmarket. Hopefully a future commentator, but works at William Hill as well. His Stag Do, we actually went karting, so the pressure was on me to be successful. And unfortunately, somebody put me in the wall during said race, and I ended up finishing second. So I wasn't particularly happy for the rest of said Stag Do.
Sounds like you're looking for revenge there.
Yeah, I didn't take losing very well.
Now, horse racing. How do you feel horse racing is doing as a sport? Is it thriving? Can it do better? What were your opinions?
It's a tough one to quantify from someone that works in the industry in various kind of platforms. I suppose from our business, I think it's very, very hard for a small to medium-sized yard to try and make it successful. We're very lucky that it's a family business, in the fact that my brother's head lad, I'm down here quite a bit. Dad's obviously here. Mum runs the office. If you had to pay people to do those jobs, which quite a lot of trainers do, you wouldn't make any money. And we're trying to hopefully be successful for the smaller owner as such. But with the prize money levels, it's very, very difficult to compete. And we have multi-millionaires, often rulers of very rich countries, able to spend very small money to them, but huge money to a yard like us. Classic example, you go into the sales, horses are making 250,000, 300,000, and it's not really seen as that big a deal. Whereas if we've got 30 grand to spend, that's a lot of money. And I think the sport's doing quite well at the real high end, but there aren't very many owners which are going to be attracted to a smaller yard that can compete. And the middle end is just kind of disappearing. There's not that many. I think 20 years ago, when Dad first started training, those businesses would have a horse in training, run it through the business. That doesn't seem to happen so much anymore. You go in a maiden, you'd often be quite lucky to find owners which probably would go to the races and have a small string. It's normally the big operations that aren't really that interested in the day-to-day racing. And I think that's where we're probably struggling. We still do the big occasions extremely well. Derby Day, Royal Ascot, York T-ball meeting, Glorious Goodwood. They're fantastic social occasions. They sell out. People have a great time. But we'd love to be having horses to try and go in those kind of meetings, but we've kind of been... we don't have that opportunity. If we're lucky, we might get a good horse, but it is very, very tricky.
Now, you've mentioned the racing club that you did have and you're looking to do again, and syndicates, and also people running through the business. Do you think that's something that racing should be making it easier? I've been told one of the things that it's very difficult to set a syndicate up, or it's not easy to set a syndicate
definitely.
up.
I think you got the badges situation. It's not quite as easy, like not a black and white answer. Yes, you should try and get as many badges as possible, but you can't give everyone 30 badges because you've only got so much space in the owners and trainers facilities, so much space in the paddock. So I think it's relatively fair, I suppose, as they do it at the moment. Some tracks could make it a little bit easier, especially on days where they know it's not going to be full on the owners and trainers. In the midweek meeting, you've got your lower grade where a lot of the owners aren't going to be going. They can make more effort, but on the consequence at the big meetings, you're not going to be able to give away all these badges. Ultimately, the cost of having a racehorse is expensive. It's about £20,000 a year, and your average person doesn't have that disposable income, and you need to try and help those that are by having increased prize money, so that if you've got a horse, for me, if you win 2 races, you should be taking home £20,000 and covering your training expenses, where owners aren't really asking for much. But at the moment, if you win, we've had a few that have won 3 times and they wouldn't have covered their yearly expenditure, never mind buying the horse, and that's quite hard to convince someone to say, look, spend £50,000 on a horse, you might get one that can win a £5,000 maiden if you're very, very lucky, but you're still going to pay 20, you're not even going to cover your expenses. So it is tricky. I think trainers can try and make the experience as enjoyable as possible for the owner. Let's say with syndicates, coming down to the yard, having that, seeing them in the morning, seeing them gallop, especially when you bought them from a year and see them grow up and develop. I say the racehorses, they definitely can improve. There's more to be done, but I don't think they generally do a bad job on the whole. I think if people are leaving the sport in the ownership sphere or having smaller shares, it's more prize money is a huge problem, and actually being able to buy racehorses cost efficiently, and there's no simple solution for that, unfortunately.
If there was one thing that you could sort out at the wave of a padded whip, what would it be?
It would be improved prize money. How we get to improved prize money, that is the issue. I think some organisations perhaps don't give as much in prize money as they should. It's not as simple an answer as that, because we have so many factions wanting different things. What trainers want and jockeys want may be very different to what racecourses want, what the bookmakers want. Sometimes I think as a whole we should all try and work together and understand a little bit what's going on with the other side. But like I say, it's so tricky, and you've only got to look at the wider world, which is probably going to have a huge impact on racing. It's frustrating to be a part of sometimes, because I think my first winner, I think there was a 0.70 at Chepstow, £5,500 to the winner. That race now, you'd be lucky if you got 3,000, but your costs have doubled since then. So we're clearly not going in the right direction. Unfortunately, I haven't got an easy answer to solve it, but definitely increase prize money, because it filters down to everybody. It's not just the owner getting it. So as a business, most trainers do not make a profit. Training fees will cover their expenses. The only way a trainer makes money is through your percentages from the prize money and through buying and selling horses if you're very, very lucky. So the trainer survives basically from the prize money. Your stable staff, the wages, they could be better, but if you put the wages up, you've got to charge more training fees, but the pool money they get from the prize money. So we've been very lucky. Betty obviously won the Super Sprint, so we've had a fantastic year prize money wise, but that's a huge bonus for the stable staff, helps keep staff in racing, all your other industries. So it does filter down to everybody, the prize money. It's not just purely for the owners, but that's a big thing really, to try and keep people in the industry, whether that's staff, trainers, owners, jockeys, etc.
Okay, 2 things. You talk about outside sort of influences. Everybody keeps going on about the whip. We all know in racing that it's a cushion padded, What are your opinions on that conundrum?
Well, the problem is, so, like I say, joining the outside world per se and having a normal job, a lot of people, their for racing is horses are made to race with the whip. They don't particularly want to go. you're being cruel. These people don't actually follow racing; they're not that bothered at all. But it's very hard to explain to someone why a whip's been used. I think whipless races, we have the hands and heels series for the apprentices, and in those races we ran one yesterday, and he just did what he wanted. He didn't particularly pick up, but it doesn't hurt the horse to whip. You've got the air cushion effect. They're bringing new whips in all the time to make the noise, which is a horse is a flight reaction animal, so they actually run away from the noise, not from the pain of the stick, which again doesn't really come across to the outside public. But we're always going to have a battle. If you don't know horses, which a lot of people don't, haven't got that background of them, it's very, very hard to explain. I think racing could survive at the whip. When you're riding horses in the gallop, most of the time you're trying to get them to slow down. You're not wanting to make them go any faster. And you're still going to get winners, because honest race horses that travel on the bridle will still win. But it will be a very, very different sport, because we've bred horses to react to the whip. You don't generally want them to be too keen, whereas keen horses actually excel in whipless races because they're on the front end giving their all, whereas the horses that are a little bit lazy, that relax and pick up in the final 3 furlongs without any encouragement, they don't really find anything, and it's just going to be a huge change. Again, it's not a simple scenario. I think it's very hard for someone that doesn't follow the sport. If you ask them, should horses be hit with a stick, they're going to say no. And I don't know how you're going to change that philosophy. Even if you explain to them, they're still going to see it probably as wrong. So it's going to be a tough one, and that's going to be one of racing's biggest issues for many years to come.
Okay, and lady jockeys, I mean, it's 2000 and we're in the 2000s. Should they be given concessions or not?
So when I was riding, we had 3 very, very good lady jockeys. One still riding, that's Hayley Turner. Kathy Gannon and Kirsty Milzerek were probably the 3 flag bearers at the time. Unfortunately, injury curtailed both Kathy and Kirsty's career. When I was riding with them, I don't think, definitely no jockeys saw them as any different, and I don't think really Connections did. Hayley's still going strong. I think nowadays we wouldn't have any owner that wouldn't want to put a horse on, because wouldn't put a jockey on because they're a female rider. What a lot of people are saying, oh, they're not reaching the top 10, they're not reaching the top. The problem is a very small percentage of jockeys actually reach the top 10, because it's a sport where Frankie Dettori is still going strong. I think Frankie's 48, 49. From when I was riding, there's only probably Adam Kirby and James Doyle left that are still going, and they're riding at a pretty high level. But every year you ride out your claim, most jockeys struggle. Now you've had 3 girls recently, Nicola Curry, Holly Doyle, Josephine Gordon. If you compare to how they've got on with their male counterpart that's lost their claim, they've done a lot better than the fellow male jockeys. It's just going to take a very long time for those jockeys to reach the top, and unfortunately injuries do happen, and that stops a lot of jockeys from making the top, or contacts. I don't think it's anything to do with sex discrimination, and if you're giving a female jockey a £3 claim, like at the moment, if we've got a lightweight, Holly Doyle we use quite a lot, but we're going to use her over any male jockey for sure. If she's claiming £3, it's a no-brainer, but is that really fair to the male jockeys? And I'd also say, media-wise, the publicity that female jockeys get far outweighs what any male jockey in a very similar position gets. So I think there's actually quite a lot of advantages to being a female jockey, and also sometimes you actually want a female jockey on a horse because a horse might go better for a girl, and that's not a negative thing. That's actually a thing to help increase the rides. They also do lighter weights, which is a big advantage. I think that's helped Holly immensely, because there isn't that many male jockeys coming through that can do under 877. If you've got a lightweight, you're automatically going to be using probably a female jockey anyway. But conversely, it's probably a negative in the fact that if you're going to have a stable jockey job in a big yard, you're going to be riding big strong colts, and you probably want a jockey that weighs around about 8'7" to 8'9". A male or female jockey at around about 8 stone, Sylvester would be a bit of an anomaly. You're probably going to have the slightly stronger, heavier jockey just naturally. So it's a very tricky one at the moment. I think if any jockey's good enough, they'll have the opportunities and they'll be able to make it. And I think Holly, Josie and Nicola in particular in recent years, as well as Hayley through the last 15 years, have shown that they're very capable and they don't need a £3 claim. it will definitely make it 50-50, but I think it's just gradually working that way at the moment, to be honest.
Okay, and then finally, you. I mean, you've been successful with lots of different things.
Whether successful is a word, but we've done lots of things.
Do you think if you concentrated on just one subject, you'd be quite formidable? Any idea where that might ultimately lay?
It's a tricky one. Obviously, it's a family business, and Dad's not getting any younger, so me and my brother are doing more and more work towards running the yard, and at some point it may be that we take over. That could be in the pipeline, but there's so many factors that are kind of outside of our control. I know that I would be a very, very good trainer of racehorses. Whether I'd be so good at dealing with owners, staff, all the other issues, I'm not too sure. I really enjoyed doing the punchy work. Hopefully I could get more work doing in that sphere, but it's kind of very tricky. Like maybe like a Ted Walsh, do a bit of both maybe. But yeah, it's tricky. I'm very lucky that I get to do something that I enjoy.
Brilliant, James Millman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.